Steve Ballmer getting sued, baby.
Thank you, finally.
Aspiration is the company that was paying Kawhi Leonard allegedly under the tables. Steve Ballmer and other Ballmer surrogates were funneling money to the company, keeping it afloat. Steve Ballmer is being sued by people who are investors in Aspiration.
We need to talk about what has become a forgotten scandal in the NBA. I know we have been obsessed with the Terry Rozier Chauncey Billups scandal on this YouTube channel. By the way, we should be having an update on that soon because a United States Congressional Committee is meeting with NBA officials Wednesday in Washington, D.C. in the wake of the indictments of Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones. The meeting is considered a briefing from members of the House Committee of Energy and Commerce and will include conversations about the league's partnerships with sportsbooks and measures to prevent illegal use of non-public information. If we have enough to bring you guys an update video following this video, I most definitely will get you guys that update. This story is completely different. This has to do with Steve Ballmer and Aspire and the fact that he's being sued for fraud. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device. And now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. You guys have been flooding my DMs about our hit rate on Prize Picks. It's over 70% for this month. We've been absolutely dominating in both the NBA and the NFL. And I'm going to give you guys my pick of the week in just a sec. First, to sign up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code microphone so you can get $50 in lineups when you make a play of $5 or more. And then tail this pick. I have Devontae Adams and Tyler Warren each recording a touchdown, and I have JJ McCarthy getting under 214.5 pass yards. I think the line's going to move on JJ McCarthy. This guy's been averaging like 150 pass yards a game. I don't care if he's going up against Baltimore. I expect him to have another game where he's getting the under in pass yardage. Now, if you guys want additional daily plays, I partnered up with a genius at making picks in a Discord server. The link to the Discord server is the WAP link in the description down below. It's the second link from the top. And thank you, Prize Picks, for sponsoring today's video. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? While I was recording this video, something crazy happened to me. Aisha Curry actually slid into my DMs and requested that my content on her gets taken down. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up. If you want to go see that video one more time, I'm going to leave a link to it in the end screen so you guys could check it out. Now let's get to today's video. Remember a couple of months ago when we talked about how Ballmer allegedly used a fake tree planting company to secretly pay Kawhi Leonard $28 million to circumvent the NBA salary cap? Do you remember how Ballmer went on ESPN acting all innocent, claiming he got conned and saying he had no idea what was happening?
These were guys who committed fraud. They conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me. I made an investment in these guys thinking it was on the up and up, and they conned me.
Well, 11 people who also invested in that same company just said we're calling BS on all of that. And they're not just complaining on Twitter. They just sued Steve Ballmer for $50 million. And the allegations in this lawsuit, they're absolutely devastating. We're talking about fraud. We're talking about conspiracy. We're talking about a legal process called discovery that could force every text message, every bank record into the public. We're talking about potential criminal charges, and we're talking about punishments that could literally destroy the Clippers franchise. The lead attorney representing these investors, he's not just some random lawyer. He's one of the most powerful trial attorneys in Los Angeles. His name is Skip Miller, and this dude has represented Rod Stewart, Elton John, Bob Dylan, and defended the city of LA in the Rodney King case. He's been named one of the most influential people in Los Angeles multiple times. A few years ago, he successfully defended the city of Inglewood when Madison Square Garden tried to block construction of a new arena. What arena was that, you might be asking? Well, the Intuit Dome, the $2 billion building where the Clippers now play.
I love Intuit Dome.
So this guy literally helped the Clippers get their arena built, and now he's trying to take down their owner. Skip Miller isn't just the attorney representing these investors, he's also one of the investors that lost money. He put his own cash into this company. So this isn't just business for him, this is personal. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand why this lawsuit changes everything, why the NBA can't ignore this anymore, why Ballmer might actually face criminal charges, and why the Clippers could lose multiple first-round picks and potentially have Kawhi's contract voided. All right, so for those of you who haven't been following this story from the beginning, back in early September, investigative journalist Pablo Torre dropped a bombshell report on his podcast. Torre spent 7 months investigating a sustainability company called Aspiration Partners. Aspiration was supposed to be a financial services company focused on environmental sustainability. They were supposed to plant trees, fight climate change, all that good stuff. They had celebrity endorsers like Leonardo DiCaprio and Orlando Bloom. And the company was backed by some serious investors, including Steve Ballmer, who put in $50 million of his own money. Torre discovered that Aspiration had a marketing deal with Kawhi Leonard worth $28 million. And according to multiple sources that Torre interviewed, including former Aspiration employees, Kawhi never did any work for this company. No social media posts, no appearances, no marketing campaigns, nothing. A former Aspiration employee told Torre, and I quote, "We went through a litany of really top tier name contracts. And then, oh, by the way, we also have a marketing deal with Kawhi Leonard. And that if I had any questions about it, essentially don't, because it was to circumvent the salary cap." It was to circumvent the salary cap. That's not speculation. That's not a rumor. That's a direct quote from someone who worked at the company. The contract had a clause that said if Kawhi left the Clippers, the deal would be terminated. Think about that. Why would a marketing deal with an environmental company depend on which basketball team Kawhi plays for? Unless it wasn't really a marketing deal at all. Now, when Torre's story came out, the Clippers immediately denied everything. They put out a statement saying neither Mr. Ballmer nor the Clippers circumvented the salary cap or engaged in any misconduct related to Aspiration. Any contrary assertion is provably false. And then Ballmer went on ESPN to defend himself. He said he was just an investor who got conned by the company's co-founder, Joseph Sandberg. He claimed that he had no control over this company and that the company conned him.
These were guys who committed fraud. They conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me.
But here's the problem with that story. Joseph Sandberg didn't just run a shady company. He's already pled guilty to federal charges for running a $248 million fraud scheme. This dude was literally making up fake financial statements, creating fake customers, and lying to investors about how much money the company had. And Ballmer wants us to believe he invested $50 million in this company without knowing any of that he had no idea that his investment was being used to keep a fraudulent company alive so he could pay his star player? Come on, bro. So that brings us to November 4th, 2025. 11 former Aspiration investors filed an amended complaint adding Steve Ballmer as a defendant in their fraud lawsuit against the company. Now, the original lawsuit was actually filed back on July 9th against Joseph Sandberg and other Aspiration executives, but Steve Ballmer wasn't named in that original filing. So why did they wait until now to add him? According to the amended complaint, quote, Ballmer's scheme to pay Leonard through Katona to evade the NBA salary cap was only later revealed in 2025 by journalist Pablo Torre. They literally cite Torre's investigation as the reason they're now going after Ballmer. Before Torre's reporting, these investors thought they just lost money to Sandberg's fraud. But once they saw Torre's evidence, they realized that Ballmer wasn't just another victim. They believe he was part of the scheme. And the allegations in this 133-page complaint are absolutely brutal. The lawsuit alleges that Ballmer used Aspiration, which is now renamed Katona Climate Solutions, to secretly funnel millions of dollars to NBA star player Kawhi Leonard. But it gets worse. The complaint says that Ballmer was complicit in and aided and abetted Sandberg's fraud. It says absent Ballmer's support, Katona could not have sustained the fraud set forth herein. And here's the part that should absolutely terrify Steve Ballmer. The lawsuit claims he didn't just funnel money to Kawhi. They allege that Ballmer transferred additional funds to keep the company afloat and to buy Sandberg's support, cooperation, and silence about the secret deal with Leonard. Let me break down what that means. They're saying that Steve Ballmer paid Sandberg to keep his mouth shut about the Kawhi Leonard payments. That's not just salary cap circumvention, that's conspiracy, that's obstruction. That's the kind of allegation that can lead to criminal charges. The complaint goes on to say that plaintiffs would not have invested and or kept their investment in Katona if Ballmer and Sandberg had disclosed the true nature of Ballmer's investment. In other words, these people invested because they thought Ballmer was a legitimate investor backing a real company. They trusted his judgment. They figured if the former CEO of Microsoft was putting $50 million in this company, it must be legit. But what they didn't know was that Ballmer allegedly had a completely different agenda. Now, before we go any further, we need to talk about the man leading this lawsuit, because understanding who Skip Miller is will understand why this is such a big deal. Luis Skip Miller is a legendary trial attorney in Los Angeles. We're talking about a guy with over 50 years of experience who has tried more than 100 cases in state and federal courts across the country. He's represented musicians like Rod Stewart, Elton John, Bob Dylan, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and Don Felder from the Eagles. He's worked with major corporations, investment banks, and government entities. But here's what makes Skip Miller really dangerous. He's known for winning cases against massive corporations and law firms with billions of dollars at stake. He's been named one of the most influential people in Los Angeles by the LA Business Journal multiple times. He's been recognized as one of the top 100 lawyers in California. And get this, back in 1994, Miller defended the city of Los Angeles in the Rodney King civil rights case. After the riots and all the fallout from the criminal trial, Miller came up with a strategy where they didn't contest liability, but let the jury decide what fair compensation was. The jury came back with about what Miller thought the case was worth, and everyone was happy. That's the kind of strategic thinking that this guy brings to the table. But here's the detail that's going to blow your mind. A few years ago, when Madison Square Garden tried to block the construction of the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, guess who represented the city of Inglewood? Skip Miller. He successfully defended against Madison Square Garden's attempts to stop the arena from being built. He helped make sure the Clippers got their $2 billion arena. So this guy literally helped the Clippers get their home built, and now he's trying to take down their owner. Can't make this stuff up. And remember, Skip Miller isn't just representing these investors, he's one of these investors. He put his own money into Aspiration. He lost money when the company went bankrupt. So when he gave a statement to Pablo Torre's podcast saying, "A lot of people have been hurt here. This lawsuit is being brought to recoup their losses. We look forward to our day in court where everything will be aired out and justice will be done." He's not just talking about his clients here, he's talking about himself. And that phrase, "everything will be aired out," that's not a threat, that's a promise. Because what Skip Miller is really talking about is something called discovery. And if you don't know what discovery is, buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting. Alright, so let me explain why discovery is such a huge deal in this case. When you're involved in a civil lawsuit, both sides have the right to request documents and information from each other. It's called the discovery process, and in a case like this, it can be absolutely devastating. Right now, the NBA is conducting their own investigation into whether the Clippers violated salary cap rules. They've hired an outside law firm called Watchell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz to look into it. But here's the difference between the NBA's investigation and a civil lawsuit. The NBA can ask for cooperation, but they can't legally force anyone to turn over documents if they don't want to. But the plaintiffs in a civil lawsuit, they absolutely can. And the lawsuit makes this explicit. It says, quote, "The full extent of Ballmer's transfers of funds to Katona and Sandberg will be ascertained in discovery." They're not guessing, they're not speculating, they're saying, "We're going to force you to show us every dollar you transferred, every email you sent, every text message you exchanged about this deal." And if Ballmer refuses or destroys evidence, that's called spoliation. And judges really don't like that. It can result in sanctions, adverse inferences, or even a default judgment against you. So think about what discovery could potentially reveal. Text messages between Ballmer and Uncle Dennis about how to structure the Aspiration deal. Emails discussing how to keep the payments secret from the NBA. Bank records showing exactly where Ballmer's $50 million went. Internal Clippers documents about the $300 million Aspiration sponsorship deal. Communication between Ballmer and Sandberg about making sure Kawhi stayed happy. This is the stuff that the NBA has been trying to get for months, and now a civil lawsuit might force it all into the open. And here's the thing, once this stuff is in court filings, it becomes public record. Journalists can report on it, other teams can see it, the Players Association can use it, the federal government can access it, and the Flight Mic will certainly make a video on it. Because remember, Joseph Sandberg already pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges, which means there's a parallel criminal investigation happening. And if discovery in the civil case uncovers evidence of criminal activity by Ballmer, that evidence can be shared with federal prosecutors. So Ballmer isn't just facing a $50 million civil lawsuit, he's potentially facing criminal exposure if it turns out he knowingly participated in Sandberg's fraud scheme. And the lawsuit specifically alleges he paid Sandberg for his silence. If that's proven true, that's not just civil fraud, that could be criminal conspiracy, that could be obstruction of justice. Those are federal crimes that carry serious prison time. Now I want to be clear, Ballmer has not been charged with with any crime. He hasn't been formally accused by law enforcement, but this civil lawsuit creates a roadmap for prosecutors. It lays out the theory of the case, it identifies what documents to look for, it names potential witnesses, it gives federal investigators everything they need to decide whether to pursue criminal charges. So let's talk about what this lawsuit means for the NBA's investigation, because up until now, Commissioner Adam Silver has been pretty quiet about the whole situation. The league said they're investigating, they hired an outside law firm, but they haven't announced any findings or penalties. But this lawsuit changes everything, because once Discovery starts producing documents, those documents could become public. Court filings are generally public record, and if smoking gun evidence shows up in a publicly filed court document, Adam Silver can't just ignore it. Think about the pressure this puts on the league. They're already dealing with the biggest gambling scandal in modern NBA history, with Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier getting arrested by the FBI. Now they've got the league's richest owner being sued for allegedly using a fraudulent company to pay players under the table. If Silver doesn't act decisively, he looks weak. He looks like he's protecting billionaire owners at the expense of competitive integrity. But here's the problem. If Silver acts too quickly before all the evidence is clear, Ballmer could turn around and sue the league for wrongful punishment. Remember, Ballmer has basically unlimited resources. He can hire the best lawyers in the world. He's not going down without a massive fight. But the lawsuit gives the NBA political cover to act, because the plaintiffs are making specific, actionable claims with specific allegations. They're saying Ballmer was complicit in and aided and abetted Sandberg's fraud for his own self-serving purpose. If those allegations are proven true in court, the NBA has to respond. When I say respond, I'm not talking about a little fine. Remember what happened with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Joe Smith back in 2000? The NBA stripped them of 5 first-round picks for under-the-table deals with one player. 5 first-round picks. Gone, just like that. And remember, the Clippers don't have a first round pick until 2030. And at the same time, that was 25 years ago, when the league was actually less strict about this stuff. Today, the penalties could be even worse. We're talking about draft pick forfeitures, massive fines up to $7.5 million, potentially voiding Kawhi's contract, and maybe even forcing Ballmer to sell the team. You don't think that last one's possible? They forced Donald Sterling to sell for racist comments that hurt the NBA's image. If they prove Ballmer systematically cheated the salary cap and lied to the league about it, that's arguably worse for competitive integrity than Sterling's comments were for public image. At least Sterling's racism didn't affect the outcome of games. Salary cap circumvention literally determines which teams can compete for championships. You know what makes this whole situation crazier? The layers of irony here are just insane. First, you've got Skip Miller, the lawyer suing Ballmer. The dude literally helped the Clippers get their arena built, and now he's using his legal skills to potentially destroy the franchise that plays in that arena. That's some Shakespearean tragedy right there. Second, Aspiration was supposed to be an environmental sustainability company. Their whole pitch was saving the planet, fighting climate change, being the good guys. And the Clippers actually entered into a $300 million sponsorship deal with them. Aspiration was going to be the founding partner of the Intuit Dome. They were marketing the arena as the most sustainable arena in the world. And it turns out the company was a complete fraud that existed mainly to pay Kawhi Leonard under the table. Third is Ballmer's whole defense is, I got conned and I'm a victim too. But bro, you're worth over $100 billion. You were the CEO of Microsoft. You didn't just casually invest $50 million without doing due diligence. And even if you somehow got conned by Sandberg, you're telling me you never once asked why this tree planting company was paying your franchise player $28 million to do absolutely nothing? Come on, man. And here's another layer. Back in 2019, when Kawhi was a free agent, Uncle Dennis allegedly asked the Lakers for part ownership of the team, a private jet, and a house. The Lakers said no. The Raptors said no. Then Kawhi signs with the Clippers for less money than he could have gotten elsewhere. And now we find out he's got an extra $28 million through a separate deal. That's one hell of a coincidence. And speaking of Uncle Dennis, here's something interesting. Tory reported that when Aspiration was falling apart and couldn't pay people, Uncle Dennis personally called to demand payment. Why would Uncle Dennis be that involved in what's supposed to be just a simple endorsement deal unless he knew it was something more? So let's talk about what's actually at stake here, because this isn't just about $50 million and some bad PR. We're talking about consequences that could fundamentally change the Clippers franchise and potentially alter the entire NBA landscape. For Steve Ballmer personally, he's facing potential potential civil liability for $50 million, though that number could go way higher if the plaintiffs prove fraud and seek punitive damages. But more importantly, he's facing potential criminal exposure if federal prosecutors decide to get involved. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, making false statements to investigators, these are all federal crimes that carry serious prison time. And yeah, I know rich people rarely go to jail, but Sandberg already pleaded guilty, and if there's evidence that Ballmer was part of the conspiracy, prosecutors might want to make an example. For the Clippers as a team, they could be looking at the loss of multiple first-round picks, massive fines, and potentially having Kawhi's contract voided. Think about what that could mean. The team just opened a $2 billion arena. Kawhi is making $50 million this season. Paul George already left for Philadelphia. The roster is built around Kawhi, James Harden, Bradley Beal, and an aging core. If they lose Kawhi and can't replace him, they're not competing for a championship. They're not even making the playoffs. And if they lose draft picks on top of that, forget about rebuilding. You'd be looking at years, maybe even a decade of irrelevance. Just like what happened to the Timberwolves after they lost 5 first-round picks. Minnesota didn't make the playoffs for 12 straight years after that, and the Clippers could be facing the same fate. For Kawhi Leonard, his entire legacy is on the line. He's a 2-time Finals MVP, 5-time All-Star, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best two-way players of his generation, and a future Hall of Famer. But if it's proven that he knowingly took illegal payments to join the Clippers, that asterisk follows him forever. Every championship he won, every achievement, everything gets questioned. People would say he's a cheater who took under-the-table money to stack a team. And for the NBA as a league, this is about integrity. If teams can just pay players through fake endorsement deals with fraudulent companies, what's the point of a salary cap? What's the point of max contracts? What's the point of any of the rules designed to maintain competitive balance? If the league doesn't come down hard on this, every owner in the NBA is going to be looking for creative ways to pay their stars extra money. So where do we go from here? Well, first, Ballmer and his legal team are going to file a response to the amended complaint. They'll probably try to get the case dismissed, arguing that Ballmer had no knowledge of Sandberg's fraud and that he's a victim just like the other investors. But here's what's going to be a really tough sell. Ballmer wasn't just some passive investor who threw some money at a company and forgot about it. He put in $50 million. That's Microsoft CEO money, not pocket change. The Clippers entered into a $300 million sponsorship deal with Aspiration. The company was going to be the founding partner of their new arena. This was deeply integrated into the Clippers' business operations. The investors are going to argue that someone like Steve Ballmer doesn't just throw $50 million into a company without doing serious due diligence. They're going to say he knew what he was investing in. He knew why Aspiration was paying Kawhi. He knew it was part of the arrangement to keep Kawhi with the Clippers, and they're going to use discovery to prove it. And if the case survives a motion to dismiss, and I think it will, given the specific allegations and the fact that Sandberg already pleaded guilty to fraud, then we move into discovery, and that's when things get really interesting. Document requests, depositions, interrogations, the whole 9 yards. Ballmer would have to sit for a deposition and answer questions under oath. Uncle Dennis might have to testify. Kawhi might have to testify. Former Aspiration employees who talked to Pablo Torre might have to testify in front of a judge, and all that testimony becomes part of the public record. The NBA is going to be watching this case extremely closely, because whatever comes out in discovery could inform their own investigation. They can't use legally privileged information, but anything that becomes part of the public court record is fair game for them to consider. And here's the timeline to watch. The Senate Commerce Committee has already demanded that Adam Silver provide answers about the gambling scandal by November 10th. That's just a few days away. So the league is already under congressional pressure to show that they're taking integrity seriously. Now with this lawsuit dropping, that pressure just increased exponentially. Congressional committees might start asking questions about the Ballmer situation too. They might want to know what the NBA knew, when they knew it, and what they're doing about it. Remember, these are the same committees that hauled baseball players in front of Congress during the steroid era. They have no problem making professional sports leagues explain themselves under oath. You know what gets lost in all of the legal talk and the business implications? The human side of the story. Because real people got hurt here. Not billionaires, not millionaire athletes, regular investors who trusted that a company backed by Steve Ballmer must be legitimate. Think about what Skip Miller said in his statement to Tory. A lot of people have been hurt here. These are good people who invested their money, maybe their retirement savings, into what they thought was a real company doing good work for the environment. And it turns out the whole thing was a fraud propped up mainly to pay a basketball player under the table. And you know who else got hurt? The actual employees of Aspiration. Former employees told Tory that when the company was falling apart, they weren't getting paid. They had families to support, bills to pay, and they were working for a company that was secretly being used as a vehicle for NBA salary cap circumvention. One former employee said that when they found out about the Kawhi deal, they were basically told not to ask questions and just accept that this is how things work. That's a special kind of moral compromise that I'm sure ate away at some of those people. And what about Kawhi himself? Look, we don't know exactly what Kawhi knew or didn't know about all of this. Maybe Uncle Dennis handled everything and Kawhi just thought that he had a legitimate endorsement deal. But given that the contract had a clause terminating the deal if he left the Clippers, it's really hard to believe that he didn't know what was going on. And if he did know, then he made a choice to prioritize money over integrity. He made a choice to be part of a scheme that defrauded investors and circumvented league rules. And that's going to haunt him for the rest of his career. So here we are. 11 investors just called out Steve Ballmer and said, "You weren't a victim, you were part of it." They're demanding $50 million in full transparency through legal discovery. They want every text message, every email, every payment exposed. And if they get it, if discovery reveals that smoking gun evidence, then the NBA has no choice but to act. We're talking about penalties that could change the entire trajectory of the Clippers franchise. Draft picks gone, contracts voided, maybe even Ballmer being forced to sell. But here's what I keep coming back to. This all happened because of $50 million. To Steve Ballmer, a man worth over $100 billion, $50 million is nothing. It's less than 1% of his net worth. It's like you or me risking your entire career for $20. So why would he do it? Why would he risk everything for what's essentially pocket change to him? And there's really only one answer that makes sense, because he believed he wouldn't get caught. Because this is probably how business has always been done in the NBA, just without the paper trail. Because everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't he? But that's the thing about fraud. It only works until it doesn't. And once that first domino falls, in this case, Sandberg getting caught, everything else comes tumbling down. And now Steve Ballmer is staring down a lawsuit from a legendary trial attorney who helped him build his arena and is now trying to tear down his empire. He's facing potential criminal charges. He's facing an NBA investigation that can't be ignored anymore. He's facing congressional scrutiny, and he's facing the very real possibility that the $2 billion arena he just opened might end up being home to one of the worst teams in the league. The craziest part is this is just the beginning. Discovery is going to take months. The NBA investigation is ongoing. Federal prosecutors might still be looking at this. Multiple legal processes are happening simultaneously, and any one of them could uncover evidence that brings the whole thing crashing down. Steve Ballmer bet $50 million that he could hide this scheme behind a tree planting company. Now 11 investors are betting that Discovery will expose everything. And honestly, I know which bet I'd take. So that's where we are with this story. What do you think is going to happen? Will Discovery reveal the smoking gun? Will Ballmer try to settle before evidence becomes public? Will the NBA wait for the lawsuit to finish before making their decision? Let me know in the comment section down below. Remember, this is just part 3 of this scandal. There's still more to come. When we get an update, I'll make sure to bring you guys an upload, but for now, go enjoy that Ayesha Curry video while it's still up, because I'm kind of nervous that she may try to sue me too. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.